Here I am, this warm, beautiful, sunny spring afternoon. It's great, sitting on a rock, surrounded by trees and plants. The wind is blowing nicely. Just a really, really nice day. Except, I can't help but feel that this ecosystem just isn't what it should be. There's this feeling that there's something invading. In fact, these invaders are looking over my shoulder right now. What, you don't believe me? All right, well then stick with me and let's take a look. So I said these invaders are watching over me, like right over my shoulder, and they are. They're right here. This plant, it's garlic mustard. Garlic mustard is an invasive species. Invasive species, or organisms that are not naturally found in an ecosystem, can come into the ecosystem and throw that whole balance off. The garlic mustard is thriving here in this ecosystem. It's all over the place. Garlic mustard releases chemicals that stop other plants from growing. There's also some research showing that it interferes with some beneficial fungi that help tree roots take up water and nutrients. So it's stopping plants from growing around it. And you know what else? The deer, which are a major herbivore in this ecosystem, they're the primary consumer, they don't eat it. So, no competition, no predators, equals lots of success. Success for the garlic mustard, but that's not good for the deer or any other herbivore in the ecosystem, or the predators that eat those herbivores, or the predators that eat those, right on up the food chain. And you know what? Garlic mustard isn't the only invasive species out here. And this isn't the only place that gets these invasive species. I'm sure you've encountered the spotted lanternfly. The spotted lanternfly is a really pretty cool looking insect. Problem is, it's doing a lot of damage. That's another invasive species that's in this ecosystem. Thousands of species are transported into new ecosystems every day. Sometimes these species can't compete in the new ecosystem, and the new ecosystem remains healthy and balanced. Other times, these invasive species can throw off the entire balance of the ecosystem and cause a major disruption. As discussed in previous videos, an ecosystem is a delicate balance of biotic and abiotic factors. Producers take the energy from sunlight, convert it into organic compounds. That energy can flow through the ecosystem in a food web. Predators keep the population of prey under control. If the prey population is limited, it keeps the predator population under control. Limited resources, called limiting factors, control the populations of organisms and species in this ecosystem. Limiting factors keep a population under control so that it can maintain a healthy, balanced ecosystem. Limiting factors include sunlight, shelter, food availability, predators, climate. Plants depend on the amount of sunlight and nutrients in the soil that they can get. The number of plants determine the number of herbivores that can be in this ecosystem. The number of herbivores can determine the number of organisms that eat those secondary consumers. It's all a balance. Invasive species can outcompete the native species, the species that live here, for those limited resources, causing those native species to be wiped out of the ecosystem. And then, because those limiting factors really don't exist for some of these invasive species, they don't have the predators, they don't need the same nutrients, they can survive on less, they can grow out of control and ultimately decimate an ecosystem. If the ecosystem doesn't have any limiting factors, there will be no control on the population of the invasive species. The invasive species population will continue to grow and could have devastating effects on the other species around it. But let's be clear about this. Invasive species aren't harmful because of what they are. They're harmful because of where they are. In fact, in their natural ecosystem, these species are an essential part of that ecosystem. They just can do damage to the ecosystem they're introduced into because there's nothing to limit their population. Things like the garlic mustard and the spotted lanternfly here in this ecosystem have no real natural predators. They have nothing limiting their growth. Their resources are available to them. They can grow pretty much out of control. And the spotted lanternfly is boring holes into these trees to eat the sap. And sap is phloem, which is food and nutrients that the plant needs. So they bore holes into these trees and then they take the sap for food. It kills the tree. Killing the tree means that something else can't eat that tree or that plant. It does millions or billions of dollars worth of damage to our crops and to our forest and to our economy because of it. These species can be moved by natural occurrences, such as the wind of a storm, ocean currents, or even just the change in climate allowing their populations to move to new locations. But they can also be introduced to a new location by human activity, either intentionally or unintentionally. Sometimes humans deliberately move a species from one ecosystem to another. Sometimes we do it unintentionally. The species ends up hitchhiking on a plane, on a boat, on a train, on a car, and gets into a new ecosystem. So how can we stop the damage done by invasive species? The best protection is prevention. Keep them from getting here in the first place. Once in the new ecosystem without predators or other limiting factors, their populations can grow out of control and they can be almost impossible to stop with any kind of method without destroying the ecosystem as well. Awareness is key. Being aware and taking the steps to prevent the transport of new species to ecosystems is the easiest and best way to stop this from being a problem. Understanding the issue and being aware of it means that we also have to work to prevent it. We have to prevent the transport of species from one ecosystem to another. In fact, governments are doing things to ban certain species from being moved from one location to another. But even more so, we have to be aware of the species that we move accidentally. We have to be aware of how species can be transported without us even knowing about it and take precautions to stop that from happening. You can also remove the invasive species from the ecosystem, such as ripping the garlic mustard out and removing it, or finding lanternfly eggs on the trees like this one and scraping them off. And one last thing, I rarely ever say this, but if you see a spotted lanternfly, you need to stomp it.